Hey there, thanks for taking your time and coming by to check out the channel. My name's Jason and welcome to the Freedom Adventure. The Freedom Adventure is a channel that started basically about the conversion of a decommissioned ambulance slowly but surely over into kind of a miniature Class C motorhome. Now, over this last year, we've managed to get a ton done. Matter of fact, it seems like it's gone on forever, but at the end of it, when I look back and see what all we've done, it is quite a bit. But we've got probably, I'm going to guess, a couple of months left worth of stuff if I stay on it. So out of all the things that I've got left to do, they're still, as far as the big things go, they're done. We got floor in, we've got a ceiling, we've got heat, we've got air conditioning, we've got running water. But one of the things that I've been putting off for the longest here has been the solar panel setup. And it's not because I'm intimidated by it, but to begin with, why put them up there? There was nothing to even run them to underneath of the roof. But here recently, I will admit that I've been kind of dodging the project just because it's not going to be fun. After all, I've got to take some pretty good sized panels, figure out how to mount those panels on the roof, making sure that they're secure. The last thing in the world that I want is a big solar panel flying off at highway speeds and taking out either a motorcyclist or hitting a car. This will be a multi-day project. I'm starting off today, and what I'm going to do here today is go ahead and heave all the solar panels that I've got stored down in the garage. I'm going to bring those up here. I did already order some racks off of Amazon that were actually designed for a Ford Transit van, and I think I can modify these racks, and I hope I can because I paid quite a bit for those racks. I think I can modify those racks in order to work on the roof of this ambulance. I think I'm going to have to trim some length off of them, and then, like I said, I'm just going to have to figure out how to really securely mount those to the roof in a manner that's not going to come up, the wind's not going to blow it out of position, and probably, well, most importantly is obviously going to be safety, but probably second most importantly is that it's not going to cause any leaks to take place within the camper. After all, we've come way too far in terms of doing the conversion on this to have water damage and everything that goes along with that. We don't want that. So if this project is something that interests you, like and subscribe to the channel. It'll give you an opportunity to go check out some of the other cool videos that we've done along the way, including videos on the shower, videos on the air conditioning install, the heater, the ceiling, and you just kind of name it, it's all on the channel. So like I said, if it's something that interests you, come check it out. But for right now, here we are, beautiful day, Saturday, November the 1st, 2025. And we're going to go ahead and get started by grabbing those solar panels, bringing them up here, unboxing them, take a quick look and see what we've got. When those solar panels were dropped off, they were all dropped in the driveway. My wife got home before I did, so she went ahead and took them all inside, leaned them up against the wall, and I've never opened them. Frankly, that's where they've been sitting for probably just a little bit over a year. Shortly after I ordered the solar panels, I went ahead and I ordered those racks. That's what I figured I could make work here on this platform. And once again, they're still in the box. They're sitting over here on the side of the shop, and we're going to unbox those and take a quick look, and I'll show you what we've got there too. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I guess at this point, I'm going to go ahead, walk down the hill, grab those solar panels and bring them up here. So like I said, these things have all been sitting down here in the garage here for about the last year or so. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to have to go ahead and move a couple of my toys out of the way so we can unbury these solar panels. But this is more progress we've made on the solar. Well, it's the most progress we made ever because we just haven't even gotten started with it yet. Probably the thing that I'm dreading the most is getting that rack set up on the roof of the Ambo. And I don't know if I'm going to mount all the panels to it first and try to heave it up there kind of all in one shot, or if I'm going to set the roof rack first and then go ahead and try to individually install the panels. It's not terrible getting up on the roof of that thing, but it's also not fun. Okay, well, as much as I hate to admit it, I had to pause for about like 5 minutes once I got these panels up here so I could take my out of shape self and catch my breath before I went any further. But basically, we bought 6 200-watt solar panels. And that's going to give us an amount of solar that's about 1200 watts. And the idea of going with 1200 watts was essentially pretty simple. You know, we could have gone with a lot less and taken up less room on the top of the ambulance, but I wanted to be able to supply enough power to the Velit air conditioner to keep it going. And then on top of that, be able to charge the batteries with a little bit of juice on top of what the Velit requires. Now, will I get 1200 watts of charge all the time? Absolutely not. There's just no way. Even with the inefficiencies, I think we're going to do probably just fine. Now, the one thing I will say about Oklahoma is we get plenty of three things. We get plenty of sun, plenty of heat, and probably the third thing that we get the most of is going to be like mosquitoes or something. But the first part is what's really going to be important here, and that's the sun. Man, it seems like even on kind of a winter day, we still get a pretty fair amount of sun here in Oklahoma, unless it's just one of those days, you know, one of those days where it's been raining or it's just super overcast. But luckily, we really do get a lot more sunny days than we get, you know, overcast days. Now, it may bite me that I didn't open these up when I first got them a year ago. I just didn't see the point to it. I'm hoping they're not damaged. There is a box over here that's got a kind of a fair size hole in the side. I rolled the cardboard back. I didn't see any broken glass, and I guess that's a good thing. It may bite me in the you know what, but today we're going to unbox these and see what we got. I'm going to go ahead and just grab those stands or those solar racks that I was telling you about that were designed for the Ford Transit. And before we even open these, or I don't know, we might open one just to take a quick look, but I'm going to go ahead and open up those racks first and just kind of see what those things are about, what's going to be required in trimming them up and putting them on the roof. Hell, maybe, you know what, maybe I won't even have to trim them, but that's what we're going to find out, so stick around. Whew, okay, man, I tell you, that was a whole lot heavier than I thought it was going to be. Like I said, these things have been sitting on the shop floor for about a year. Let's go ahead and open this up and just kind of take a quick look at it and see what's here. Hopefully, there'll be instructions, and hopefully those instructions are actually worth a hoot. All right, so first thing I'm seeing here is a whole lot of really thick rubber pads. Splay these out kind of like a deck of cards. Here we go. It looks like they are 3M stickers here on the back, and I could only imagine that these are what sticks to the roof of the ambulance or transit. There are some instructions, thank goodness, and I want to show you the picture of kind of how this rack looks. This is essentially what I bought here. It's just kind of a ladder style rack, and that's why I chose this, is because it looks like it'll hold up to what appears to be about 4 panels. Now, I'm not going to use this for 4 panels. I'm going to use it for 3, and hence the need to modify this, and I'm going to show you how I do that here soon. Okay, required tools: standard set of box wrenches, standard socket set, metal file or sandpaper for cleaning holes in rib after drilling, primer and paint to protect holes after drilling, torque wrench, anti-seize to apply all bolts during installation. Okay, cool. They definitely had guys like me in mind because there's a lot of pictorials here, and that's kind of how I work. First thing I will say I'm digging here is all these fasteners look like they're Allen head fasteners, and they're not Phillips head. Allen head, whole lot more grip when you go to tighten these things down, and much less chance you're going to booger something up. If these are the feet that this stand mounts to, guys, this is ridiculously thick. That is probably 1/4 inch plate steel right there, folks. That's going to get the job done. Once this is attached to the roof, and I'll tell you more how I'm going to do that here in just a little while, but once this is attached to the roof, it may be the roof that gives out, it may be the fasteners to the roof that gets out, but I could assure you it doesn't look like it's going to be these brackets here. Not sure what this is exactly, but we'll go ahead and set this back here. On a side note, is it just me, or do you guys suffer with like an overabundance of cardboard in your life? I tell you what, we do, for sure, without a doubt. So between all the stuff we've ordered for this camper conversion, it keeps us in a constant supply of excess cardboard. I tell you what, man, between Amazon and Chewy.com, just that alone right there puts us in a overflow state of cardboard. But you know, like, no kidding, it's a real thing. And we'll go ahead and cut open these braces and see what is in here. You know, I pulled up Amazon last night and I was just kind of trying to remember what these racks look like. And unfortunately, I think these have been discontinued. Actually, they still show them, but it looks totally different than what I purchased here that just has kind of the ladder style frame. The product now looks like the ladder style frame with like this little integrated spoiler piece that goes in the front. You see, these racks were meant to be mounted kind of front to back, and that little spoiler piece I think molds to the front section of a Transit van. If you just happen to have a Transit, man, I think this would be gold. Unfortunately, not many people are modifying ambulances into RVs, so I just kind of have to buy what I can and then make that work. All right, more stuff to cut through. Wow. Wow. Look at that. This is extruded aluminum here, people. Look at that. Look at the width of that. That has got to be 1.5 inches square. If that's maybe even 1 3/4. That is some stout stuff. Very, very impressed with that and feeling much, much better about what we spent on these things. I can't say it enough. I'm impressed. All right, let's see where we go from here. We're gonna go ahead and unwrap what's in the other portion of this, and I don't know if these are side rails or if these are the ladders that go across. All right, well that's not very heavy, so there just must be a ton of these in here to create that kind of weight. So these bars that go on the side, I couldn't remember how big this rack was, but just taking a quick measurement of it, what we're gonna end up with is a rack that runs 10 foot 6 inches. And the width of my rig, if you've listened to my channel, you probably know it by heart by now, but it's 8 feet wide. So we're gonna end up having to cut 2 feet off of these. Before I do that, what I wanna go ahead and do is assemble it in its entirety and then do a measurement after I see it put together. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put it together, take a look the way it's supposed to be designed, the way it's supposed to go onto a Ford Transit van. Then we're gonna step back, take a look and see, man, can I get away with one of these? Obviously, I've got 6 panels. I don't think something that holds 4 is gonna work, but maybe I can make it, I don't know. We'll just have to take a look. Before I move forward here, I just wanted to take a quick, just a quick second and show you guys the quality of this product. I see that extruded aluminum? That is thick. You can see in relation to my hand that that is no joke. Also, these crossbars, they're very lightweight. I think they're aluminum. First thing I'm doing here is I'm going to be joining end to end 2 of these for 1 continuous run, or actually 2 continuous runs of 10 foot and 6 inches. Folks, even coming over here and looking at this hardware, this is the bracket here that is going to be used in order to join 2 of those together. And these aren't little Phillips head screws that are going to hold this together. These are going to be some fairly substantial hardware. Looking at the hardware it comes with, you could see this is a quality product. Before I started putting this together, I decided to go ahead and reconcile all the hardware here that you see with the list of hardware that it said was in the package. And I'm glad I did, because I did discover that these extruded aluminum pieces come in 2 different lengths. There's one that's about 1.6 meters and another about 1.41 meters or something like that. Anyway, there's 2 of those each. I'm really pretty jazzed about the quality of materials, or at least, you know, first impressions looking at this stuff. Some of the products that I've used in this camper conversion, I've ended up going to buy different hardware in order to mount it and utilize it, just because the cheap quality hardware that it comes with strips very easily. Their screws aren't long enough or just whatever. Okay, so I went ahead and I spared you the process of putting this rack together. None of it's difficult, but I do advise to go ahead and count your hardware and just kind of make sure that you're using the correct stuff. And like I said, these crossbars, they do come in 2 different widths. So, you know, something to be mindful of. But at this point, this is it. It's not all the way fastened together right now. I've got the ends fastened, hard fastened, at least at this point, so we can go ahead and lay some panels out and kind of get an idea how many panels I'm going to be able to use. And if my measurements came out correctly on this, because I did measure it numerous times before I bought these racks, I believe we're going to be able to fit 3 racks, I believe we're going to be able to fit 3 different panels onto this rack. I will need to do some trimming on it, but before I do, I'm going to set it up here on the top of the ambo. We're going to take a look at it and get an idea for what it's going to look like, and who knows, maybe we'll come up with a different configuration. It may change. So let's check that out and see what we've got. All right, before we toss that up there or throw solar panels on, just another quick view, at least a little bit closer, and you can kind of see how this lays out. There are only provisions here, at least I'm going to only make 3 panels worth of provisions. It's got a couple extra of these crossbars. I don't know, maybe we'll use them, maybe we won't. Right now we're just still in the test phase. So once again, we'll go ahead and move forward here and set a panel or 2 down in the openings, kind of get a feel for what that's going to look like, guys. We are going to unbox about 3 of these panels. We're going to see what they look like. And hopefully, like I said, none of them are broken, because once again, they have been sitting on the shop floor, or rather on the garage floor, for the last year. What we're doing is just taking the casing off this panel just to kind of see what's underneath of it. What we've got here. Man, that's pretty. All right, guys, take a look at this. All right. All right, well, there it is. This is the first of 6 panels that we're going to be unboxing here today. Obviously, it looks brand new. It is brand new, although a year old. And man, I'm really excited to see how this is going to look once we get these placed on the frame and get an idea how they're all going to group together. In the instructions, it's making it look like we need to attach these crossbars first to the panels, and then you go ahead, you pick the panel up with the bars on it, and then sit that down onto your frame. It goes a step further in saying that you're supposed to go ahead and attach the main bars to your camper first, and then sit the panels in here. But for right now, what we're going to go ahead and do is just sit the panels in position, but we are going to go ahead and attach them to these, since that has to be done anyway. As you can see, we've got 2 panels that are down in position on this rack, and we're going to go ahead and place the 3rd one here just momentarily. All right, so what you're looking at this point is 1 rack built, and we got 3 solar panels unboxed, and we got the sides of them bolted to the panels. The way this is supposed to work is you bolt the rack to the top of your camper, and then one at a time you take the panels up into position and mount them to that rack. Man, ain't it pretty though. This is like one of those milestones that we've gotten here, because at this point, once we get the solar installed, we'll be able to leave this outside and it won't have to be plugged into shore power. We've still got to install the inverter. But once that inverter's installed, it'll actually power the onboard charging stations for the camper. And that goes not just for the solar batteries, but also for the 12-volt batteries. See, I keep a battery tender on this machine all the time ever since I bought it. There's 3 large batteries that start this ambulance, and I don't want those to go dead. That's a very expensive endeavor. Now, what you are going to notice, and you can see it pretty plain here, is this is way wider than the 3 solar panels. And the way this design is going to work out is I'm going to have 3 solar panels in this formation behind the MaxxAir fan, which is located in the center of the ambulance, and then I'm going to have 3 in front of it. Well, okay, there it is. The Freedom Adventure, the camper van. The myth, the legend. If you look up at the top there, on top of the roof, you're going to see what appears to be a couple of queen-size bed frames sitting there on top of the bed. But that's not what those are. Those are actually racks that are sold for the purpose of holding solar panels. And you can't see much of them here. I'll get up there in a second, kind of show you what they look like. But you can kind of see just where they're hanging over, and believe it or not, they're really not hanging over very much, maybe like by about a ½ an inch. But I'm glad for that. I had to trim them down to get them to fit like that, because they were actually quite a bit longer than that. I'm pretty stoked about this side over here. Eventually, I'm going to have an awning over here, and the side of that rack, both the front rack and the rear, are going to give a great spot to mount that awning to. I'm now looking at it from the front, and it's a little bit different perspective, but you can kind of see what I've got going here. There's a rack in the front that's going to hold 3 panels, and then there's a rack in the back which is also going to hold 3 panels. Each panel is a 200-watt solar panel, so in its entirety we will have 1200 watts of solar. When you look at it from here, you could kind of see that the racks are lined up with each other, and hence that is going to be the base, hopefully, to install an awning here eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and climb this ladder, give you guys an idea what it looks like from the top. And you can kind of see You zoom out just a little there. Like I said, it looks like a bed frame. And there's one in the rear and one up there in front of that MaxxAir fan. The solar panels themselves are about 28, 29 inches wide, so by the time I put 3 of those side by side, it is going to take up that entire rack minus probably about 6 inches. So once again, I'm going to have 1200 watts of solar here. Will I get 1200 watts? No, man, probably not. It's being flat up here and not having them angled, I probably won't get that much. Here are a couple of the panels that I'm actually going to be using here, and these things were Rich Solar 200 watt panels. Now, like I said, 1200 watts is probably not going to be a thing, but the reason I sized it at 1200 was because my air conditioner by itself pulls roughly about 700 when it's just going gangbusters. Now, at the end of the day, what I really wanted was just enough juice to go ahead and power the air conditioner 100% by the sun's power, and still be funneling some in order to charge the batteries up through the day. That way, all through the night, I've got plenty of juice left in my battery bank to go ahead and run the air conditioner through the evening hours. Now, will that be enough? Well, that remains to be seen. That'll have to be a different video. And I will circle back eventually and let you know kind of how it makes it through the night, or you know what, maybe it won't. And we're going to find that out. Last weekend, I was successfully able to go ahead and get the perimeter frames built, you know, what kind of looks like bed frames. Those are built, they're modified because originally they did come for a Sprinter van, and I had to modify them in order to sit sideways, you know, on the ambulance camper conversion that we've got here today. So not only did I get that accomplished, but what I also got done was took all the hardware, all the bracketry, and got that mounted to the solar panels themselves. So ideally, once the frames are installed on the top of the camper, I'll be able to walk those panels up kind of one piece at a time and get them secured. Today, what I've got to do is crawl back up on top of the camper and get all these little brackets that are already mounted to the frames. I've got to disconnect those. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and grind off the finish on the bottom parts of these brackets. Now, the reason that I'm doing that is to go ahead and use a 2-part structural panel bond adhesive in order to mount these brackets to the roof of the camper. Now, the adhesive that I'm using is something that we use in the collision industry for automobile repairs. And this is 3M08115 is the part number. And guys, this stuff is the madman. There's no doubt about it. This stuff is insane strong. Once these brackets are down, they're not coming back up. This stuff takes about like maybe 24 hours to fully cure, and it does give you a window of time to work with it. I want to say you've got probably about 90 minutes or so in order to manipulate and move your bracketry as necessary before it starts really going off and setting up. What I'm going to do is not just use the panel bond, but I'm going to go ahead for the clamping force, because you got to have a clamping force to hold this together so that panel bond actually takes effect. I'm going to be using just some self-tapping screws. I'm going to use 3 in each bracket. I'll go ahead and I'll pre-drill my holes in these brackets here in a few minutes, grind them finish off the bottom. Then I'm going to crawl up on top of the camper to go ahead and start prepping the surface. These brackets over here, last week before I called it a day, I went ahead and I had to modify these holes, these large holes that are there. I had to drill a few more in order to modify these brackets to work with the application that I've got here. Once again, this setup was designed for a Sprinter van, and if you have a Sprinter van, I can't say enough positive things about this setup. It would simply be a bolt-on and go type of application. And it's pretty much going to be that for this build as well. However, it did require some modification. Also, you could see on these brackets, I've removed the paint on the bottom of these brackets, and I've also drilled 3 little holes here, which I did with my drill press, and I ran, I think 2 or 3 different size bits in order to get this size here. I may still go ahead and run one more through, because when I put the self-tappers through this, it's not really all that important that the threads clamp into this, because the head of the screw is going to do that. I don't want to create myself more work than necessary by starting off with a hole that's too little in this. The fasteners will self-tap into the roof of the camper. That's what it needs to do. At this point, I guess I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to spare you the pain of listening to this grinder going off while I remove the paint on these brackets here. Nonetheless, it's time to get this show on the road. It took me a long time to get these things centered where I was happy with them, and that the edges from the front rack to the rear rack matched. And it's all basically done by tape. Tape on the roof and then tape on the racks. And it looks like this week this tape has started to kind of pull loose. And I need to make good and sure that these are in the right spot. So hopefully this will be the last round of holes that I'm having to drill, and man, it's taken a while. All right, so the brackets are clean at this point and they're ready to glue, but what's not ready to glue is the surface up on the roof of the camper. So next step here is I'm going to go ahead and climb up onto the roof of the camper with my handy little angle grinder, and where I've got everything marked off in terms of the brackets, at least for each frame, I've got 4 areas taped where I want to put the corner brackets in anyway. For right now, I'm going to climb up on the roof and I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of grind work on the roof surface and at least get 8 areas prepped and ready to go. Let's get our grind on. I will give it this. This is single stage paint and it has received years of beat down, but it's held up like really well. Get this other side wrapped up, and then it'll be time to drill some holes. After that, the glue comes out. Well, I just finished up cleaning the approximately 300 tools I think I dug out of the toolbox to do all this work. All those have been put up, and this is what remains. The racks are on. The brackets are not only screwed down, but they're also they're panel bond adhesive as well. Like I said, guys, these things, they're not coming off. And should I ever decide to go ahead and remove these racks, well, the brackets, they're going to stay. As a matter of fact, if the solar panels ever go, hell, I don't know, maybe I could build a deck up here or something. I don't know, but these racks are certainly strong enough to do that. This is one of the rear brackets, and it looks kind of like a mess here. I haven't gone over them with Dicor yet, but the squish factor was pretty real when it came to how much of that panel bond adhesive came out. So what I did was I just kind of painted the self-tapping screw heads. You can see the heads, but they are covered in adhesive. And once I go over everything with Dicor, they're going to be covered even better yet. This one here does not have them covering the screw heads. Those were probably one of the first ones that I did. And I ended up going a little bit more liberal in terms of the adhesive for the rest ones, in particular the ones in the front, just because I feel like that's going to be where the wind is the hardest on the brackets, and you know, better safe than sorry. I think at this point, I don't know what time I got started this morning. I want to say about 9 o'clock, and it's about 3 o'clock now. Just like everything else on this project, it's taken me, you know, you plan for an hour or two and it ends up taking 4 or 5, and this has been no different. Once this adhesive sets up, I'm going to go ahead and smother that in Dicor. So I'm going to leave this until tomorrow morning, smother them in Dicor, and then at that point I'm going to go ahead and get those solar panels up here on the top. Hopefully I'll be able to show you something that looks a little bit more like progress instead of bed frames, you know, screwed to the roof of an ambulance. I will say, however, I'm glad that I'm up here and that I'm going to have the Dicor out, because while I was up here, I started taking a look at this Max Air fan that I put in, and the Dicor does kind of shrink back a little bit. There's a couple little bitty areas where some air pockets look like they popped, and a couple little cracks in the Dicor. So I'm going to go ahead and do a round 2 in terms of covering all that up, just to be on the safe side. Now, underneath of this, there is about an inch wide strip of urethane tape. Odds are those little cracks and air pockets wouldn't really do anything, but like I said, I'm going to be up here anyway, and I'm going to be getting crazy with that stuff, so might as well go ahead and get crazy on that too. The other thing that I'm going to cover up is that old antenna right there. When I was doing the sealing on the ambulance from the inside, I could see that, and I could have popped that out, but that's about an inch wide hole that I would have had to seal. So I just went ahead and left it the way it was, and I'm going to go ahead and just absolutely smother that in Dicor. It will not leak, and it's already got the hole plug there. I'll just go ahead and Dicor right over top of that. Bottom line though, all the really hard work up here is now done. I'm very pleased with the way this came out. I can't tell you, guys, these look strong, and they are strong. When I come up to the side of this camper with my ladder, I'm no longer, you know, just hopping up there with a leap of faith. I'm able to grab a hold of these racks and using them for bracing. And I'm not joking when I say you could stand on top of these and they will not flex. Super strong. Now the solar panel racks are installed, and the panel bond adhesive is curing out The only thing that lacks is smothering everything in Dicor just to make sure that we're not going to have any leaks. But the day's still early. There's still things I can do. So I dug out my charge controller, and what the goal here is to go ahead and get the charge controller mounted in the electrical cabinet and maybe start doing some of the wiring. I would like to at least get this thing mounted today anyway. I haven't opened the instruction manual just yet. We're going to figure that out here starting in just a few minutes. It looks like kind of like a car audio amplifier on the bottom, and going to the top side here, you take these two screws out, and that's where all your connections go. Solar panel inputs, and then of course the outputs going down to your solar batteries. Okay, so it's Sunday morning, and the panel bond adhesive is absolutely set up. It is about as tough as it's probably going to get. So now it's time to go ahead and smother the brackets with Dicor, and what Dicor is a self-leveling sealant. I had used it on the MaxxAir fan, and it looks like this is pretty popular stuff in the RV community. I'd never really heard about it before I got into these projects, but it is a pretty good sealant. They are kind of proud of it when it comes to price, but it does do a great job. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and inch up the ladder, get back on the roof, and go ahead and cover everything that looks like it even might leak with a good coating of Dicor. Okay, so now the Dicor's been put on all the potential leak points. Between the panel bond adhesive and the Dicor, I really don't think we're going to have any troubles up there in terms of leaks. It's time to go ahead and start shuffling some solar panels from ground level on up into the roof. And I'm going to have my wife go ahead and pass these things to me one at a time and get them secured into position. But before I do, I just wanted to show you the way that these brackets here attach to the solar panels. It's a pretty basic setup, and what it includes is basically two pieces of angle, and these they actually bolt using I believe they're 8mm bolts with a Teflon nut, a Teflon line nut that holds all these on, and each side's got about 4 of those bolts and nuts holding that on. Once these are up into position and we get them all connected, and speaking of that, the way that we're going to connect these is, well, the front bank will be connected in series. The rear bank will also be connected in series. Where the front and the rear banks join, those will be connected in parallel. And what that's going to do basically is just limit the voltage within the range of the solar controller that we're going to use here from Rich Solar. Here in just a few minutes, though, I'm hoping here in about 30-45 minutes, we're going to have solar panels on the roof. And that's going to be kind of one of those milestone occasions. Even though it's not working at that particular moment, it's going to be pretty awesome just because that is, I don't know, it's kind of like the icing on the cake. Well, I had speculated it was going to take about an hour, and it turned out it took quite a bit longer. As usual, the fight was real with the Dicor that was still wet. I didn't really think that was going to be an issue, and I'm just going to say I should have done it last night. But man, don't they look good. And the next step is going to be hooking these up, seeing if we have any juice. The wiring is now complete. At least I've got 3 panels on one bank and 3 panels on the other bank. It was supposed to be the 3 in the rear on one and then the 3 in the front on the other. But the way these, well, the way the wires are set, well, the bottom line is I'm going to need a couple of extensions. And I don't have those here today. But in order to demo it and just see if it's going to work, this is what I've done. I don't like all these wires crossing over, but once I get those extension cables in, that'll go away. The way it sits right now is I've got that center panel, this panel, and that panel all on one bank, and then that one, and then the very far one on the other bank. And that's just simply to make the cables that I have work. But like I said, once I get those extensions in, all these wires that you see crossing from panel bridge to panel bridge, those will all be going away, which is a good thing too, because this little runway here in the middle is all I've got now in order to get up on top of the camper and do any maintenance I need to. But the bottom line is the fewer tripping hazards up here, that's definitely for the better. I've got the solar charger hooked up to the negative and the positive post of the battery bank. And one thing I will mention is on the positive cable, rather than going to the bus bar, I went straight to the actual battery. And the reason I did that is because if I will go to the bus bar, that means that it would not be charging the system when the system is off. That little master switch that you see right there, that shuts everything down. But even if I've got it shut down, I still want it drawing energy from the sun, meaning I still want this thing to be charging the batteries. So that's why I went straight to the battery. So now the positive and negative are hooked up to the solar charger. The next thing to do is going to be to connect the solar panels to the solar charger also. So essentially the two banks on the roof have gone down to one bank when it comes to the electrical, just a positive and a negative. And I need to run those across the side of the ambulance and then down the wall, and right about in there somewhere I'm going to drill a hole, and that's where those wires are going to route through. Now I certainly can't imagine that that's going to look really good just to have a hole in the side of the wall. So what I did is I ordered one of these little pods here that essentially the negative and positive go on the bottom, and then of course this protects it from the elements. So I'll probably go ahead and butyl tape this to the wall, screw it in, and that will kind of hide the grommet that's behind it, and just make sure that there is, no water leaking into the camper. So the first step here is basically going to be drilling a hole somewhere in this general vicinity in order to run those wires. Now, I really don't want to have them running down the side of the camper any further than what I have to. So my thoughts are bringing it in as high up here as possible. So I'm going to take a look inside the cabinet right quick, see what's behind this, and just make sure I'm not drilling into anything that I shouldn't be. Well, good news, nothing's there that's going to present itself as a problem. So I guess it's time to go ahead and start doing the deed here. Go ahead and get us a hole punched through this wall. Man, I wish I had something to grab a hold of to leverage. Ooh, those are hot. This is basically just a little rubber grommet. They come sealed up and you just cut it as necessary. And I bought an assortment of these things off Amazon, and I really only bought them for one purpose, but they've really come in handy for, my gosh, more than I could even tell you about. Definitely recommend it whenever you're running wires through any kind of bulkhead or any kind of metal. And that is looking good, and that will do what it's meant to do. Now, second thing I need to do here, I guess, is to go ahead and get that little pod and kind of mark out where I want these holes to be. Not really a fan of how these wires are going to hang down on the side of the rig, but I got to enter the cab somehow, and I don't like the idea about drilling additional holes in the ceiling. So here we go. I need to find some screws and get this party started here. I've decided at this point I'm not going to go ahead and glue this little shroud to the wall just yet, or not glue it, but use the butyl tape and screws. I will get to that point, but as you can see, there is a lot more cable here than I am going to end up using. And once I put that on, I don't really want to have to take it off, and getting this wire strung through that wall and then through this little pod here is going to be kind of a chore. Well, I'm not going to do that at this point. Once all this is installed and I go back to sanitize my electrical cabinet, whatever you want to call it, then I'll start getting a little bit more surgical. I am going to put it over the wires, however, so I don't have to restring them. But for right now, it's just going to be kind of hanging loose. Right now, I'm just going to go ahead and plumb this inside, get up to the controller, and here shortly, we'll go ahead and hook these solar panels up to these cables. I'm going to go ahead and get some zip ties and zip tie this to this frame just to kind of keep it out of harm's way. Well, that will at least ensure that these don't get slammed into this door on accident. That could be bad. I got to climb up on the other side and crawl up there and hook these up. So these little splitter connectors here is what takes the two banks of the solar and then reduces it down to the positive, and in this case here, the negative. If everything's hooked up right, maybe we'll see some reading. Maybe we'll see some reading because there are some overhead lights up here. Not super crazy in terms of brightness, but there are some lights. So in theory, there should be some kind of output. Okay, as far as input coming through the solar panels now, it says 27.1 volts. Okay, 21.7 volts. But it says 0 watts. So I don't know if we've got it hooked up right or what that means. So what we may have to do is just pull this thing outside. The battery monitor also kind of confirms that. It looks like we've got 26.3 volts. However, we're not seeing any flashing going on with the battery monitor, meaning that there's no incoming voltage to it. So either they're not connected correctly or we just need to be in sun. Maybe the lights that I have here in the shop just aren't enough. Well, the moment of truth is pretty much here at this point. If I've got the panels hooked up correctly, I think I do, although I'm a little bit concerned that I'm not getting any readout from the shop lights. It still feels like I ought to, but I'm going to go ahead and pull this beast outside and see what it looks like. So good news, it does look like I'm definitely getting a charge here at this point, but the sun is pretty far west in the sky right now. It only looks like I'm getting about 130 watts or so worth of charge, and we're just going to have to test this on a sunnier day when the sun is more overhead to see what 1200 watts could really produce. Honestly, 130 is pretty pathetic in my opinion for a 1200 watt system, but once again, I'll show you the orientation of the sun here in just a second. I don't know how well this will show up, but you can see the sun in the sky is definitely not in an overhead position, not by a far cry. The charge controller looks like we're taking in about 145, well 152 watts, give or take, 33.7 volts of charge, and obviously this is nowhere near capacity, but the good news is it is working. Sure what those lights up there are, I'm going to have to do a little research on that. When I said a little bit ago that my battery monitor was not flashing, this is what I meant. Whenever it's, whenever you're just drawing a load off the batteries, this thing will just show up solid green. But if it's taking on a charge, whether that charge be through a battery charger or whether it be through solar, it will sit there and flash, kind of like what you're seeing now. And right now this thing pulls about 30 watts, give or take, on idle with just the lights running anyway. And right now, as you can see, it's fluctuating pretty rapidly, peaking up over 100. Now we're at 97, 99, and so on and so forth. So it's definitely taking a charge, just not a great big one right now. But we are getting to the peak of the afternoon. It's going to be dark here in probably about 2 hours, give or take. Just for grins, I think what I'm going to do is crawl up onto the roof just real fast and disconnect one of the banks on this to see if the incoming wattage actually reduces. That'll tell me whether or not both banks are producing or not. Okay, as I suspected, we just cut our wattage in half. Looks like we're getting 49.8 volts and 61 watts of power. So definitely disconnecting one of those solar banks, and each bank consists of 3 panels. Knocked us down obviously quite a bit. I'll crawl back up there here in a second and reconnect that. But before I do, I wanted to look and see what we've got here. It looks like, man, we're not taking much in, like, at all. Okay, 14 watts. Okay, so plus the 30, about 45, 50 watts worth of power. Because like I said, this thing pulls 30 amps, or not 30 amps, but 30 watts on idle. So if you add 30 to that number, we're right about 45 watts. So let's get up there and reconnect. Okay, so now we're back up there again, probably close to 100 watts of power. Something also to take into consideration is there's a large tree right there that has to be getting into the way. I think what I'm going to do is pull this thing out in the street real quick and just see what that looks like before we put her up for the night. Okay, well, I like that a lot better. I don't know if you could see that or not, but we're looking at about 300 watts of input now. Much better, and that's just from moving it about 30 feet forward and getting kind of out of the shade of that tree. And once again, the sun is very non-upright in the sky, if you will. Okay, so as you can see, we're definitely taking on more wattage now, and it's fluctuated a little. We were at 300, it's 236 in here, but like I said, add about 35 to that. So probably about 275, 270, somewhere in there. But that's looking a lot better. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this thing does in full sun with sun overhead. Okay, so here's the end of weekend number 2, and the solar panels are now officially installed and functional. There are a few things that I need to do. One of them is probably buy some extension cables for the solar on the top of the roof, just to make everything a little bit more sanitary and not have wires kind of scattered everywhere. It won't be a good idea for those to be up there. If I've got to get on the roof, I could snag one. Bad deal. So everything is functional. Took it outside. It's definitely producing solar power, just not in the quantity that what I was hoping. However, with the orientation of the sun where it is today, that's certainly understandable. That pretty much wraps up the solar panel install for today anyway. At least until I can get outside on a sunnier day, or at least a day when the sun is, straight up in the sky and not way out towards the west. Now, the 300 watts it was producing, I have no clue. This is my first solar system I've set up. So you guys tell me, with the sun that far west in the sky, my solar panels are mounted flat on the roof of an ambulance camper conversion. Is that normal? Should I be getting more? I don't know. Honestly, I'll probably be pretty happy if I could end up getting somewhere between about 500 and 700 watts of power out of this. The idea was to be able to supply enough power to the Veled air conditioner that it would actually run that through the day. And if I'm lucky, maybe it'll give me enough additional wattage to go ahead and put a charge to the batteries. That way I can get through the evening time also. Now, of course, in the winter, it probably really won't matter so much, but the summer, yeah, it's going to be a thing. And like I said, right now, 300 watts with the sun that far west in the sky, it's probably normal. But once again, I really don't have any clue. This is the first one of these things I've set up. It's all new to me. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Well, anyway, folks, that's really all I've got for you here tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the video. And if you have enjoyed the video, you probably would enjoy some of the others that I've got out there. So like and subscribe if you do. It helped me out. I really do value every watch hour and every subscriber that comes our way. We are a very little channel. So, go ahead and check it out. What will it hurt? Like I said, we're going to call it a wrap here for tonight. There'll be plenty more videos to come, and hopefully I'll see you there. Anyway, guys, happy adventures, and I'll talk to you then. Take care, y'all.